Hello everyone. So welcome to this video. In the previous video, we discussed the Poisson's integral formula. So the Poisson's integral formula is given by u of z equals 1 by 2 pi integral r square minus modulus of z square by modulus of xi minus z whole square into u of xi d theta over the circle mod xi equals r. And it is true for all z with mod z less than r, where u is harmonic, in the open disk mod z less than r, right? So now we shall express this integral in the parametric form. So for any arc gamma, so an arc gamma means it is a succession of points, or it is a set of points as the parameter t varies over some closed interval alpha beta. We all know that any arc is nothing but a continuous image of a closed interval alpha beta. That is, so if you consider any closed interval alpha beta, so if you map this closed interval into plane using any continuous function, then you will get a set of points. So that set of points is called an arc, or you'll call that continuous function is an arc. So sometimes an arc is considered as a continuous image of closed interval alpha beta into the plane R2, or whenever we map a closed interval continuously into the plane, we will get a succession of points. As t varies from alpha to beta, so we will get the points. We'll get the succession of points. That succession of points is an arc. So we can write the points of an arc using the parameter t, which varies over the closed interval alpha beta. So suppose the points of an arc gamma are z of t, as t varies over the closed interval alpha beta, then the line integral f of z dz over gamma is written as f of z of t z dash of t dt, as the parameter t varies from alpha to beta. So the line integral f of z dz over gamma means that we have to integrate the values of f of z for the points z on gamma, but points on gamma are of the form f of z of t, that is z of t. So we have to integrate the values f of z of t z dash of t dt, because here the parameter was z, that is the variable was z, here the variable is t. So dz was there, but the points are z of t. So d of z of t means z dash of t dt. So we will get this. So this is called the parametric form of the line integral f of z dz over gamma. So if I use the same idea here, so this is the line integral over the circle mod xi equals to r. So in parametric form, the circle mod xi equals to r is taken as the points on the circle are given by center plus radius into e to the power I theta, as theta varies over the closed interval 0 to 2 pi. Right? As the parameter theta varies from 0 to 2 pi, z of t equals r into e power I theta will give you the points on the circle with center 0, radius r. So the points on this arc are taken in the parametric form as r into e to the power I theta. So now these are the points on the arc. So writing the same Poisson's integral in the parametric form. So integral, so limits 0 to 2 pi r square minus modulus of z square by xi minus z whole square u of xi d theta, where xi has to vary over the points of the circle. That is, xi takes the values r into e power I theta, as theta varies over the closed interval 0 to 2 pi. So this is just the parametric form of the Poisson's integral. Right? Now in this Poisson's integral, take u to be the constant function 1. That is, u is the function which maps all the points to 1 itself. So u of z is 1 for all the domain points. Then u of xi will be 1 and u of z will also be 1. So 1 will be equal to 1 by 2 pi integral r square minus modulus of z square by modulus of xi minus z whole square d theta, or cross multiplying 2 pi. So you'll get the value of this integral is 2 pi. So for all z with mod z less than r, the value of the integral r square minus modulus of z square by modulus of xi minus z whole square 0 to 2 pi is 2 pi. So just remember this. We'll use this integral value in further problem. Okay, now we shall have a problem. Let u be real continuous function on the circle modulus of xi is equal to r. So modulus of xi is equal to r is a circle with center 0 and radius r. Right? U is given to be a real valued continuous function on the circle mod xi equals r. Now we are defining a new function. So using the real continuous function u on the circle, so we define pu of z. It is defined to be 1 by 2 pi integral 0 to 2 pi r square minus modulus of z square by modulus of xi minus z whole square into u of xi d theta. It is defined for all z with mod z less than r, and here xi actually should vary over the circle with center 0 radius r. So that is xi takes the parametric form r into e power I theta as theta varies from 0 to 2 pi. So just observe that this is nothing but the Poisson's integral formula. Actually this definition coincides with the Poisson's integral formula. Now here we call this pu of z as the Poisson's integral of u. As u is a continuous function, so this integral first of all exists, right? So we know that a necessary condition for a function to be integrable is continuity. So you can observe that the integrand. So however, this is a real number and this is a real valued function which is continuous. So integral of a continuous function obviously exists, so that is pu of z exists. So pu of z is a well defined function, and that function is called the Poisson's integral of u. So now we shall verify some of the properties of this Poisson's integral of u. So the first property is, for any two real and continuous functions u1 and u2 on the circle mod xi equals r, pu1 plus u2 of z is pu1 of z plus pu2 of z. Next, for any real constant alpha, p alpha u of z is alpha into pu of z. And if u is non-negative, that is if u is greater than or equal to 0 on the circle, then pu of z will be greater than or equal to 0 for all z with mod z less than r. And if u of z values, that is u of xi values, lie in between small m and capital M, then pu of z lies in between the same limits. Pu of z lies in between small m and capital M for all z with mod z less than r. And finally, for any real constant c, that means in place of any continuous function u, if you consider the constant function c, then pc of z is the constant c itself for all z with mod z less than r, where you can choose c as any real constant. So now we shall verify these 5 properties one by one. We shall start with the first one. Let u1 and u2 be real continuous functions on the circle mod xi equals r. Right? Then we shall define the Poisson's integral for the function u1 plus u2. So just use this definition. So this is the Poisson's integral of u, the function u, where u is a real continuous function. Now here u1 and u2 are given to be real continuous functions. So their sum u1 plus u2 is also a real continuous function. How it is defined? So u1 plus u2 of xi is defined to be u1 of xi plus u2 of xi. As u1 and u2 are real valued, their sum is also a real value. So u1 plus u2 is a real, and sum of two continuous function is again continuous. So u1 plus u2 is a real continuous function on the circle mod xi equals r. So its Poisson's integral is defined. And how is defined? P u1 plus u2 of z is defined to be 1 by 2 pi integral r square minus modulus of z square by modulus of xi minus z whole square into u1 plus u2 of xi d theta from 0 to 2 pi. So that is just in place of u, we have u1 plus u2 of xi. Now, what is u1 plus u2 of xi? It is u1 of xi plus u2 of xi. So this is the only change, and rest are everything is same. Now, we have u1 of xi plus u2 of xi. So there are sum of two terms. So with respect to these two terms, we can split this integral. We can split the integral into two. So one is with respect to u1 of xi, the other with respect to u2 of xi. So just split the integral. So this will be integral with respect to u1 of xi. This will be integral with respect to u2 of xi. Then use the Poisson's integral definition. So this will be nothing but the Poisson's integral of the function u1, and this will be nothing but the Poisson's integral of the function u2. So that is, we got p u1 plus u2 of z is p u1 of z plus p u2 of z. So we can say it is a linear. It is linear with respect to addition. So next, second property, that alpha be any real constant, then so alpha is the real constant, real number. So now how we define alpha u of xi? It is defined to be alpha into u of xi. As u is given to be real continuous function, alpha into u of xi will also be a real continuous function, because alpha is real, u of xi is real. So alpha into u is a real function. And scalar multiple of any continuous function is again continuous. So alpha into u is a real continuous function. So its Poisson's integral is defined. Its Poisson's integral is defined. And how it is defined? So just in place of u, take the function alpha into u. So p alpha u of z is defined to be 1 by 2 pi integral r square minus modulus of z square by modulus of xi minus z whole square into alpha u of psi. So just in place of u, we have alpha into u. Now use the definition of that function. Alpha u of xi is alpha into u of xi. Right? So just this is the replacement, alpha into u of xi. So now take alpha outside as it is a constant, and the remaining part. So what is this remaining part? It is nothing but the Poisson's integral of u. So on the right hand side, we are left with alpha into pu of z. That is alpha, that is p alpha u of z is alpha into pu of z. So which proves the second property. Next, come to the third one. They have given that u of z is greater than or equal to 0 on the circle mod xi equals r. So u is a non-negative function. Basically, it is a real valued function, and in particular, u of z takes only non-negative values, suppose. And now, observe that r square minus modulus of z square by modulus of xi minus z whole square is also positive. So we can verify it, because pu of z, it is defined for all z with mod z less than r. So for all z with mod z less than r, consider the numerator r square minus modulus of z square. As modulus of z is less than r, modulus of z square will also be less than r square. Multiply minus on both sides. Minus modulus of z square is greater than minus r square. So this will be greater than minus r square as it is. So r square minus modulus of z square is greater than r square minus r square, which is equal to 0. And about the denominator, So consider modulus of xi minus z. So it is greater than or equal to modulus of xi minus modulus of z. So as modulus of z is less than r, minus modulus of z will be greater than minus r. So this will be greater than minus r. So modulus of xi is equal to r. Modulus of xi is equal to r. So it is also greater than 0. So modulus of xi minus z is greater than 0. It is positive. So its square will also be positive. So numerator is also positive. Denominator is also positive. So the fraction will be positive. So what that means? So this term is also positive. U of z is non-negative. So the integrand, that is what you are integrating. So this is called the integrand. So now the integrand is non-negative. And whenever the integrand is non-negative, the integral will also be non-negative. It is a property of a real integral. Whenever f, some function f is non-negative on some interval, closed interval a comma b, then its integral over the closed interval a comma b will also be non-negative. So here the integrand is non-negative. So over the closed interval 0 to 2 pi, so the integral will also be non-negative. That is pu of z will be greater than or equal to 0. So which completes the third property. Now the fourth one, assume that u of xi lies in between small m and capital M on the circle mod xi equals r. Now what is required to prove? We have to prove m is less than or equal to pu of z less than or equal to capital M, right? So to prove this, start with m. M is m into 1. So that 1 is written as 1 by 2 pi into 2 pi. That is multiply and divide by 2 pi. Now this 2 pi is replaced by the integral 0 to 2 pi r square minus modulus of z square by modulus of xi minus z whole square d theta. So just in the starting of this video, I stressed on this integral. So I have marked it as star previously. So we are using that integral now. So the value of this integral is 2 pi. So I'll replace 2 pi by this integral. Right? Now, as m is constant, take it inside the integral. So it will be m into d theta. But using the hypothesis on this circle, so this integral is taken over the circle, right? So it varies for xi equals r into e power I theta. That is, for all points on this circle, m is always less than or equal to u of xi. So we shall use it. So m is less than or equal to u of xi. So this integral will be less than or equal to this integral. And what is this? It is, by the definition, the Poisson's integral of u, pu of z. And now, once again, for all points on the circle, xi is equal to r into e power I theta. For all points on the circle, u of xi is always less than or equal to capital M. So this integral will be less than or equal to this integral. And as m is constant, take it outside. So what is the remaining integral? So it is taken as 2 pi. We know that. So this integral is taken as 2 pi. So 1 by 2 pi into 2 pi is 1. So we are left with capital M. So we started with small m. So small m is less than or equal to pu of z, which is in turn less than or equal to capital M. So we got the required inequality m less than or equal to pu of z less than or equal to capital M. So which proves the fourth property of the Poisson's integral of u. Now, for any real constant c, consider the Poisson's integral of c. That means this time we have taken u of xi to be the constant function c. So for all points on the circle, so u of xi is the same constant c. So c is chosen to be real, so it is a real valued function, and a constant function is always continuous. So if I define u of xi to be c, then it is a real continuous function. And for a real continuous function, we have defined the Poisson's integral. So, and it is defined as, so Pc of z is defined to be 1 by 2 pi integral r square minus modulus of z square by modulus of xi minus z whole square In place of u of xi, we have c, because u of xi is c for all points on the circle. Right? So now, as c is a constant, so take it outside. So then you are remained with this term. But where this integral is equal to 2 pi. Initially we have seen, which we call it as star. So c into 2 pi by 1 pi 2 pi. So it will be 1. So we are left with c. So whenever you choose u of xi to be constant function c, then pu of z. So pu of z, actually it is 1 by 2 pi here, u of xi. So u is nothing but the constant function c, and u of xi is c. So that you will get pc of z to be the constant c itself. So that is what we got is pc of z is equal to c for all z with mod z less than. So these are the some properties of the Poisson's integral of a continuous function, right? Okay, now we shall come to a very important theorem, which is the Schwarz theorem. So it states that if u of xi is a piecewise continuous real function on the circle mod xi equals 1, and pu of z, function pu of z is defined to be 1 by 2 pi integral 0 to 2 pi 1 minus modulus of z square by modulus of xi minus z whole square u of xi d theta for all z with mod z less than 1, and where xi varies over the unit circle with center as origin. Then pu of z is harmonic in modulus of z less than 1, and limit pu of z as z approaches e power I theta naught is u of e power I theta naught. If u is continuous at e power I theta naught, where theta naught is any value between 0 to 2 pi. So Schwarz theorem actually talk about the harmonic condition of the Poisson's integral formula. So Poisson's integral of u. So you can observe that. So this identity is called Poisson's integral of u. So which we have seen some of the properties earlier. So this Poisson's integral of u will be harmonic in modulus of z less than 1. And u is given to be piecewise continuous. Piecewise continuous on the closed circle mod xi equals to 1 means, so it is continuous on this circle except for finitely many points, or in other words, u of xi has finitely many discontinuities on this circle, right? So this is the hypothesis. U of z is piecewise continuous real valued function, and pu of z is nothing but the Poisson's integral of u. With this hypothesis, we have to prove pu of z is harmonic. That is, we will prove the Poisson's integral of u is a harmonic function. And further, whenever u is continuous at e power I theta naught, that is, so u of xi is given to be continuous on the unit circle mod xi equals 1. So if I write the points of the circle in the parametric form, so what are the points? So the points on the unit circle with center 0. So 0 plus radius into e power I theta. As theta runs from 0 to 2 pi, xi equals e to the power I theta will give you all the points on the unit circle. On these points, at all these points, u of xi is continuous. That means u of xi is continuous at e power I theta, as theta varies from 0 to 2 pi. But they have given it is piecewise continuous. So u of xi is piecewise continuous at e to the power I theta. So that is, u of xi is continuous at e to the power I theta, as theta varies from 0 to 2 pi, except for finitely many values. As it is piecewise continuous, it will have some finitely many discontinuities. That means for some finitely many values of theta, u of xi will be discontinuous. So suppose if it is continuous at e power I theta naught for some theta naught between 0 to 2 pi, then we have to prove this limit holds. So the limit of the Poisson's integral of u as z approaches e power I theta naught will be simply u of e power I theta naught. So there are two parts here. So in the first part, we shall prove p of z is a harmonic function. And in the second part, we shall verify this limit. Right? So first part, we shall show that pu of z is harmonic in the disk mod z less than 1. So basically, so what they have given, pu of z is 1 by 2 pi integral 1 minus modulus of z square by modulus of xi minus z whole square u of z d theta 0 to 2 pi, where xi is varying over the unit circle, That means we have considered this integral in the parametric form, which is the Poisson's integral of u. Now we shall convert it into the line integral, right? So on the unit circle, so we are integrating this for the points on the unit circle. So the points on the unit circle will be of the form xi is equal to e power I theta. Theta runs from 0 to 2 pi. So it is in the parametric form. So on the circle mod xi equals 1. So we have this. So on the unit circle mod xi equals 1. So this is the Poisson's integral formula, right? So here 1. So 1 is replaced by modulus of xi whole square because we are integrating this over the unit circle. So xi is varying over the unit circle, right? So 1 can be written as modulus of xi whole square because modulus of xi is equal to 1, 1 square is 1. So I have replaced 1 by this because we are integrating this over the unit circle, right? Now we shall simplify this term. So as we have already done this, so just it is a repetition. So modulus of xi square minus modulus of z square by this one. So use the identity modulus of z square is z into z bar. So xi into xi bar minus z into z bar by xi minus z into xi minus z whole bar. Multiply and divide by 2. So we have 2 times of the numerator. So add and subtract z bar, xi and xi z bar. So add and subtract these two terms 2 times. Then take the common. So in this term, xi is common, xi bar minus z bar. And in this term, z is common, xi bar minus z bar once again. Next, in the third term, xi bar is common. We are remained with xi minus z plus in the last term, z bar is common, xi minus z. So in the first two terms, xi bar minus z bar, that is xi minus z whole bar is common. So we are remained with xi plus z. And in the second term, xi minus z is common. We are remained with z bar plus xi bar, that is xi plus z bar, z whole bar into xi minus z divided by the denominator. Now split the denominator. So if I consider the denominator for the first term, so this term gets cancelled. So we are remained with xi minus z by xi plus z by xi minus z. Plus with respect to the second term, xi minus z gets cancelled with the denominator. So we are remained with xi plus z by xi minus z whole bar. So now it is of the form 1 by 2 into z plus z bar. So it will be real part of z. So we are using this identity. So the given Poisson's integral of u can be rewritten as pu of z equals 1 by 2 pi integral 0 to 2 pi real part of xi plus z by xi minus z u of xi d theta. Now, as u is given to be a real valued function, so u of xi, real part of u of xi is u of xi itself. So I can replace u of xi by real part of u of xi. So real part of this into real part of this will be real part of the product, right? Product of real parts is real part of the product. So we'll get real part of this thing. But integral of the real part is real part of the integral. We have done all these things already. So P of z will be real part of 1 by 2 pi integral 0 to 2 pi xi plus z by xi minus z into u of xi d theta. Now we are on the unit circle, that is this integral is taken over the points on the unit circle. So on the unit circle, xi will be of the form, that is the points on the circle will be of the form e to the power I theta, where theta varies from 0 to 2 pi. It is argument of xi, or if we consider in the polar form. So if we consider the points xi in the polar form, so modulus of xi into e to the power I into argument of psi. So xi equals, it is over 1 to e to the power I theta. So theta will be the argument of psi. So differentiate this equation. So d xi equals I into e power I theta d theta. So this is nothing but xi. So take to the right hand side. So d xi by xi. I goes to the left side. So it will be minus I. So 1 by I. So it will be minus I. So d theta will be minus I into d xi by xi. So replace d theta by d xi by xi, where we are getting back into the line integral. So this was in the parametric form. So this integral is taken over the unit circle. As xi varies, xi takes the values e power I theta, theta runs from 0 to 2 pi. So that means this integral is taken over the unit circle mod xi equals 1, and theta d theta is d xi by xi into minus I. Minus I goes to the new denominator, so that it will be I. So 1 by 2 pi I, this one. So now observe that the expression which is in the inside the bracket, that is 1 by 2 pi integral xi plus z by xi minus z u of xi by xi dz. So we have proved this function is an analytic function. We have proved it to be an analytic function previously. So at the end of Poisson's integral formula, we noted some of the things. In those, one of the thing was, so we proved this expression was an analytic function. So the expression which is inside the bracket is analytic function. In fact, we expressed this function, this term which is inside the bracket, as u of 0 into this function, u of 0 into u of 0 plus this function. So u of 0, which is a constant, and it is analytic everywhere, and this function using a lemma. So a lemma says if phi of xi is continuous on some arc gamma, then the integral phi of xi by xi minus z whole power n d xi. So any function defined in this way will be analytic in the regions determined by gamma. That means this function will be analytic everywhere except on gamma. So now g of xi will be this one on simplifying this term, and it will be continuous on the unit circle. So this function will be analytic everywhere except on the unit circle. So in particular, it will be analytic inside the unit circle. So this expression will be analytic inside the unit circle. So that is, we have pu of z equals real part of this function, which is analytic. So as this function is analytic, its real part will be harmonic. We have seen that a necessary and sufficient condition for a function to be analytic is its real and imaginary parts are harmonic functions, and one is the harmonic conjugate of the other. So as this function is analytic, its real part will be harmonic. So hence pu of z being the real part of an analytic function in the unit disk, it will be harmonic. So we will be arguing that this will be an analytic function, so its real part will be harmonic. Okay, so now which completes the first part. That is, we proved that the Poisson's integral of u, that is pu of z, is harmonic. Now we shall come to the second part. So what we have to prove? We have to prove limit pu of z as z approaches e to the power I theta naught is u of e power I theta naught, provided u is continuous at e power I theta naught. Now just focus on what is the domain of u. So they have given that u of z is piecewise continuous on the unit circle. So on this unit circle, u of z is piecewise continuous. So if I consider the parametric form of this unit circle, so xi is equal to center plus radius into e to the power I theta runs from 0 to 2 pi. That is, the points on the unit circles are given by xi is equal to e power I theta varies from 0 to 2 pi. So u of xi, the function u of xi is also written as e power I theta. So u of xi is continuous except for finitely many values of theta, as it is given piecewise continuous u of xi or u of e power I theta. So this function is continuous except for finitely many values of theta, as it is given piecewise. So that means there are some theta values at which u is discontinuous also, right? So now, if at all u is continuous at e power I theta naught for some theta naught between 0 to 2 pi, then we can have this limit, right? So we have to make the assumption that u is continuous at e power I theta naught, where theta naught is any value from 0 to 2 pi. So this assumption is necessary because u is not necessarily continuous at all theta values, right? As u has some discontinuities, for some theta values, it may be discontinuous. So under the assumption that it is continuous at some e power I theta naught, we shall prove the limit, right? So assume that u is continuous at e power I theta naught for some theta naught from 0 to 2 pi. Now, without loss of generality or without affecting any theory, we shall assume that the value of u power I theta naught is 0. So with the assumption that u of e power I theta naught is 0, we shall prove the result, right? So with this assumption, we shall prove that pu of z as z approaches e power I theta naught is u of e power I theta naught. So which is a simpler condition, because so u of e power I theta naught could be any value. It could be any real value. So assuming it is 0, we shall prove the result. So which will become somewhat easier situation to handle, as it is 0. So now we have to justify it that if we assume u of e power theta naught is 0, it will not affect the theory or it will not affect the theorem. So that is, if you prove the result with the assumption that u of e power I theta naught is 0, the result also should hold in whenever u of e power I theta naught is non-zero. So whenever u of e power I theta naught is non-zero, in that case also we need the result. So they have not specified that it is always equal to 0. So whenever it is non-zero also, we have to get the same result. So for that, so just we made a observation. Suppose that the result holds with the above assumption. That is, assume that we have proved this limit. We have proved this limit with the assumption that u of e power I theta naught is 0. Right? Now suppose it is non-zero now. We shall handle this case. So let u of e power I theta naught could be some alpha which is non-zero. Now consider the function u minus alpha. So u minus alpha of xi is defined to be u of xi minus alpha. So as u of xi is piecewise continuous on the unit circle, and alpha, which is continuous function, it is constant, so it is continuous everywhere. So u minus alpha of xi will be piecewise continuous on the unit circle. So u minus alpha. So this function will be continuous wherever u is continuous. As alpha being constant function, it is continuous everywhere. So at all the points where u is continuous, u minus alpha will be continuous. As u is piecewise continuous on the unit circle, u minus alpha will also be piecewise continuous on the unit circle. Also, u is continuous at e power I theta naught. So u is continuous at e power I theta naught. So u minus alpha will also be continuous at e power I theta naught. Also, u minus alpha of e power I theta naught is 0. So that means we have a real piecewise continuous function u minus alpha, which is continuous at e power I theta naught, and u minus alpha of e power I theta naught is 0. So what we have made the assumption, whenever there is a function u which is real, piecewise continuous, and it is continuous at e power I theta naught, and u of e power I theta naught is equal to 0, we have assumed the result, right? We have made the assumption that whenever u of e power I theta naught is 0, we have proved the result. So now just in place of u, we have u minus alpha. U minus alpha. So u minus alpha is a real piecewise continuous function which is continuous at e power I theta naught, and u minus alpha of e power I theta naught is 0. So by our assumption, the result has to hold for this particular function u minus alpha. That is, therefore, by our assumption, p u minus alpha of z as z approaches e power I theta naught should be equal to u minus alpha of e power I theta naught. So this is what we are applying the assumption. But u minus alpha of e power I theta naught is 0. So this limit will be 0. And what is that limit? It is p u minus alpha of z. So use the first property of Poisson's integral formula. So p u1 plus u2 of z is what? P u1 of z plus p u2 of z. So just in place of u, we have u1. In place of u1 we have u, and in place of u2 we have the constant function alpha, so that is minus alpha. So u minus alpha, so pu of z will be equal to pu of z minus p alpha of z. So using the first property of Poisson's integral, so p u minus alpha of z will be pu of z minus p alpha of z. And as alpha is a constant, p alpha of z will be alpha by property phi. By property phi. Now split the limit. So limit of p of z minus limit of alpha. As alpha is a constant, limit of the constant is itself. So take that minus alpha to that side. So limit p of z as z approaches e power I theta naught is alpha, which is nothing but u of e power I theta naught. That means whenever u of e power I theta naught is a non-zero value, so we can handle that case only using the case when it is 0. So it is enough to prove the result for the particular case where u of e power I theta naught is 0. And in all rest of the cases, it follows directly. And that is, whenever u of e power I theta naught is non-zero, it follows by this particular case, right? So now we shall prove that limit pu of z as z approaches e power I theta naught is u of e power I theta naught, with the assumption that u of e power I theta naught is 0. That means this value is 0. So what we have to prove? We have to prove limit pu of z is 0 as z approaches e power I theta naught. So this is what we have to prove now. So we have to prove limit pu of z as z approaches e power I theta naught is 0. So how we can prove it? So using the limit definition, to prove limit pu of z as z approaches e power I theta naught is 0, we have to prove that for every epsilon there exists a delta such that whenever distance between z and e power I theta naught is less than delta, distance between pu of z and 0 is less than epsilon. So this is what we have to prove. So that start with the epsilon. So let epsilon greater than 0 be given. Now we shall use the assumption that u is continuous at e power I theta naught. So first of all, u is defined on the unit circle. U is defined on the unit circle, and which is piecewise continuous. Now in particular, u is continuous at this point. So as u is continuous at this point, as u is continuous at u of e power I theta naught, for every epsilon there exists a delta positive such that u of xi minus u of e power I theta naught can be made less than epsilon whenever the distance between xi and e power I theta naught is less than delta. That means for some delta neighborhood of e power I theta naught, so this condition holds. That means as u is continuous at e power I theta naught, for all points in the delta neighborhood of e power I theta naught, this holds. That is, we can find some delta neighborhood around e power I theta naught, for which distance between u of xi and e power I theta naught can be made less than epsilon. But so this delta neighborhood contains only these points of the domain of u. So u is not defined everywhere. U is defined only on this circle. So the delta neighborhood of e power I theta naught contains only the points on this circle. So these are the neighborhood points. These are the delta neighborhood points of e power I theta naught. And what is it? It is actually a part of the arc. So you can call it as a sub arc, or you can call it as an arc also. As it is a part of a circle, it is called arc. So you can observe that. So delta neighborhood of e power I theta is nothing but a part of the circle. So note that. So delta neighborhood means it should contain points around the e power I theta naught in the form of a circle, because in the plane any neighborhood is nothing but a disk. So these are the points of the neighborhood. But u is not defined for all these points. U is defined only on the circle. So on the circle there is e power I theta naught. So if we consider any delta neighborhood around it, only these are the valid points. Only these are the valid points. So it is nothing but a arc. It is nothing but a arc. So we shall use it. So as u is continuous at e power I theta naught, there exists a delta neighborhood. So that is, delta neighborhood in this case will be an arc. So there exists an arc. I'll name it as C2 on the unit circle, such that u of xi, distance between u of xi and u of e power I theta naught can be made less than any epsilon value. So we have taken epsilon by 2 here. So this distance is less than epsilon by 2 whenever xi varies over the delta neighborhood of e power I theta naught. In this case, delta neighborhood is an arc C2. So this is the unit circle, and on this unit circle, this is the delta neighborhood of e power I theta naught. So which we have taken as C2, which we have called it as C2. Now, as u of e power I theta naught is 0, so we are left with u of xi is less than epsilon by 2 for all xi varying over the arc C2. Right? Next, let C1 be the complementary arc of C2 on the unit circle mod xi equals 1. That is, if I consider the unit circle, so on this unit circle, e power I theta naught was a point, and around that there is a delta neighborhood. So the points belonging to the delta neighborhood and on the circle. So this delta neighborhood points, it is called C2. So this part of the unit circle is called C2. So now come to the remaining part. So this is the remaining part. This is the remaining part of the unit circle other than C2. So call it as C1. So C1 is the complementary arc of the unit circle. It is the complementary arc of C2 on the unit circle, right? So C2 is this one and the remaining part is C1. So together it forms the unit circle. Together it forms the unit circle. Now we shall introduce two functions, u1 and u2. So u1 of z is defined to be u of z itself on the C1, on the part C1, and u1 of z is defined to be 0 on C2. So we are defining two functions u1 and u2 on the unit circle. Now the unit circle is divided into two parts. One is C2, the remaining part is C1. So on C1, u1 of z is defined to be u of z itself, and on the remaining part, u1 of z is defined to be 0. So in contrast, u2 of z is defined in opposite way. So we define u2 of z to be 0 on C1 and u2 of z to be equal to u of z on C2. So these are the definitions of u1 of z and u2 of z. So note that, so both are defined on the unit circle. So they are differentiated between the arcs, right? On C1, u1 of z is u of z, and on C2 it is 0. And in contrast, u2 of z. So note that both are defined on the unit circle and wherever u is continuous, u1 and u2 will be continuous. So as u is piecewise continuous function, u1 of xi and u2 of xi will also be piecewise continuous functions on modulus of xi is equal to 1. And further you can observe that u1 of xi plus u2 of xi is nothing but u of xi, because so for any xi with mod xi equals to 1, that is for any point on the unit circle, so either it will be in the arc C1 or it will be in C2, because now the unit circle is divided into two arcs. One is C2, the other is C1. So if psi is any point on the unit circle, then it will be either in C1 or it will be in C2. So if it is in C1, so if xi belongs to C1, then u of xi can be written as u1 of xi according to our definition, because whenever xi belongs to C1, u of xi coincides with u1 of xi. And whenever as xi is in C1, so u2 of xi will be 0. So whenever xi belongs to C1, u of xi can be expressed as u1 of xi plus u2 of xi. Now assume that xi belongs to C2. So whenever xi belongs to C2, so u of xi coincides with u2 of xi. And as xi belongs to C2, u1 of xi is 0. So in this case also u of xi can be written as u1 of xi plus u2 of xi. So in any case, either it belongs to C1 or C2, using the definition of u1 and u2, u of xi can be written as u1 of xi plus u2 of xi. So u is now the sum of two functions u1 and u2. So as u is u1 plus u2, pu of z is pu1 of z plus pu2 of z. So just I am using the property 1. So what needs to prove now? We have to prove that pu of z is less than epsilon, right? So for that we shall prove that pu1 of z is less than epsilon by 2 and pu2 of z is also less than epsilon by 2, so that we will get pu of z to be less than epsilon, right? So now note that modulus of u2 of xi is less than epsilon by 2 for all points on the unit circle, because how we have defined u2 of xi? u2 of xi is defined to be 0 for all points on C1, and it is defined to be u of xi for all points on C2, right? So anyhow, u2 of xi is 0 on C1, u2 of xi is u of xi on C2. So on C2, these u of xi's are less than epsilon by 2, right? So u2 of xi is has two values, so u2 of xi, it is either 0 or u of xi. So on C1 it is 0, on C2 it is u of xi. So if I consider modulus of u2 of z, it is either modulus of 0, it is 0, or it is either modulus of u of xi. On C2 u of xi, modulus of u of xi can be made less than epsilon by 2. So modulus of u2 of xi is either 0 or it is less than epsilon by 2. So in general, I can say modulus of u2 of xi is less than epsilon by 2 for any points on the unit circle. So any point on the unit circle belongs to C1 means modulus of u2 of xi is simply 0. So which is obviously less than epsilon by 2, as epsilon is positive. And if it belongs to C2, u2 of xi is nothing but u of xi, which is directly less than epsilon by 2. So in any case, modulus of u2 of xi is less than epsilon by 2 on the unit circle. That is, u2 of xi lies in between minus epsilon by 2 and plus epsilon by 2 on the unit circle. So as u2 of xi lies in between minus epsilon by 2 and plus epsilon by 2, by the fourth property of Poisson's integral of u, so pu2 of xi lies in between minus epsilon by 2 and plus epsilon by 2. That is, modulus of pu2 of z is less than epsilon by 2. So one is proved. So now just it remains to verify modulus of PU1 of Z is less than epsilon by 2. So this is what remains to verify. So for that, consider the definition of PU1 of Z. So for any real piecewise continuous function in the hypothesis, PU of Z is given to be this one. So just in place of U, we have U1. So U1 is also a piecewise continuous function. So according to our hypothesis, so this will be PU1 of Z. So which is in the parametric form. That is, xi varies over the unit circle. That is, xi takes the values e power I theta. Theta runs from 0 to 2 pi. So the same integral can be written as integrals taken over the unit circle. That is, once again, xi varies over the points e power I theta. Right? So just you are taken in the line integral form. Now, modulus of xi equal to 1. That is the unit circle. So unit circle is divided into two arcs, C1 and C2. C2 is the delta neighborhood of e power I theta naught, and C1 is the complementary arc of C2. So the unit circle mod xi equals to 1 can be written as C1 plus C2. So now integral can be splitted for C1 and C2. So integral over C1 U1 of xi. So over C1 U1 of xi is nothing but U of xi, and over C2 U1 of xi is nothing but 0. So integral will be simply 0. So P U1 of z is remained to be 1 by 2 pi integral 1 minus modulus of z square by modulus of xi minus z whole square u of z d theta over the circle C1, because integral over C2 reduces to 0. Okay. So now following the same steps as in the first part, so PU1 of z can be written as real part of 1 by 2 pi I integral over the arc C1. So just refer part 1. So what are the things we have applied? The same has been applied here also. So PU1 of z is written as real part of this function. Now consider the expression which is inside this bracket. So 1 by 2 pi I integral over C1. Then once again, as in the first part, we can prove that this function is analytic in the regions determined by C1. So that is, this function will be analytic. This function will be analytic everywhere except on the arc C1. So just we will use the lemma. This will use the lemma. In fact, this integral, this function f of z is written as u of 0, which is constant, plus 1 by 2 pi into this one, where u of 0 is continuous everywhere and it is analytic everywhere. But this function by a lemma, it will be continuous and analytic everywhere except on C1. So except C1, except on the for the points on C1, for all rest of the points, this function is analytic. That is, we say it is analytic in the regions determined by gamma, where we are using a lemma. So in the previous video, at the end of Poisson's integral formula, I have explained this part. So this integral will be analytic in C except on C1. So except for points on the C1, so this function f of z is analytic everywhere in C. That is what I have written here. So f of z is analytic in the complementary of C1. That means, so it is analytic for all points in the complement of C1. That is C minus C1. Right? Now, so as f of z is analytic, f of z will be a continuous function, so that its real and imaginary parts will also be continuous. So real part of f of z will be continuous in the complementary of C1. So real part of f of z, call it as some v of z. So what will be v of z? V of z will be real part of f of z. So this is what we have taken. So v of z will be real part of this term, which is true for all points in the complementary of C1. So that means in the whole complex plane, so this was the unit circle, and on this unit circle, this was C2 and the complementary arc will be C1. So except on this part, except on this arc, so V of Z is continuous everywhere. So except on this arc C1, V1 is continuous everywhere in the plane. So in particular, e power I theta naught. So it is in the arc C2, so it will not be in the arc C1. So e power I theta naught is a point in the complementary of C1. So V of Z will be continuous at e power I theta naught. And moreover, V at e power I theta naught reduces to 0 in fact. Because, so consider V of Z, which is nothing but real part of 1 by 2 pi I integral of C1. So now d xi by xi into minus I can be replaced by d theta, which we have already done previously also. So now real part of this one. So real part of the integral is integral of the real part. So real part of xi plus z by xi minus z is nothing but 1 minus modulus of z square by xi minus z whole square. So this will be nothing but p of z. So put z is equal to e power I theta naught, as we need e power I theta naught, v of e power I theta naught. So z will be replaced by e power I theta naught. So in the numerator, we have modulus of e power I theta naught, so which will be equal to 1, because we have initially observed that e power iy will be 1 for all real values of y. So theta naught is a real value, so e power I theta naught modulus will be equal to 1. So numerator will be 1 minus 1. So 0 by anything is 0, 0 into anything is 0. So the whole term reduces to 0. So that V is continuous at e power I theta naught, and V at e power I theta naught is also 0. Now compare what is P u1 of z and V of z. So V of z is what? It is real part of this integral, which is true for all points in the complementary of C1. Now, in particular, what is PU of Z, PU1 of Z? It is this one. PU1 of Z is this one. It is also the same term, but it holds only for the points inside the unit circle. And V of Z is holds for all the points in the complementary of C1. That means, so if this is the unit circle, so this part is C2, the remaining part is C1. So V of Z, so inside this circle, we have PU1 of Z, and elsewhere, so except on C1, everywhere we have V of Z with this definition. Note that definition of PU1 of Z and V of Z coincide inside the unit disk. So note that PU1 of Z and V of Z is same for all points inside the disk. So just refer the definition of these two terms, right? So PU1 of Z and V of Z coincide for all points inside the disk. Now, since V of Z is continuous at e power I theta naught, for every epsilon, there exists a delta, right? So there exists a delta such that V of Z minus V of e power I theta naught can be made less than epsilon by 2 for all points in the delta neighborhood of e power I theta naught. And Z should be in the complement of C1, because the domain of V is what? It is the complement of C1. So as V of e power I theta naught is 0, modulus of V of Z will be less than epsilon by 2 for all points in the delta neighborhood of e power I theta naught, and Z is in the complement of C1. So what is the complement of C1? It is the whole plane except C1. So this is C1. If I assume this is C1, so complement of C1 means all the points in the plane except on C1. So that complement of C1 contains the unit disk. So it contains the points inside the circle. So in particular, modulus of V of Z can be made less than epsilon by 2 for all points in the delta neighborhood of e power I theta naught with modulus of Z less than 1, as this is a part of the complementary of C1. But in this region, V of Z is nothing but PU1 of Z. So modulus of P1 of z is less than epsilon by 2 for all points in the delta neighborhood of e power I theta naught, and modulus of z is less than 1. So now I come to the end of the theorem. Modulus of Pu of z can be made less than or equal to modulus of Pu1 of z plus modulus of Pu2 of z. So modulus of Pu2 of z can be made less than epsilon by 2 irrespective of points in the unit disk. But this term can be made less than epsilon by 2 for all points in the delta neighborhood of e power I theta. So combiningly, we can make this modulus less than epsilon for all points in the delta neighborhood of e power I theta naught and in the disk mod z less than 1. So what that means? So as distance between z and e power I theta naught is made less than delta, distance between pu of z and 0 can be made less than epsilon. So in other words, we can write limit pu of z is 0 as z approaches e power I theta naught. And by our assumption, u of e power I theta naught is 0. So the limit holds. The limit holds. So thus we proved that limit pu of z by z, limit pu of z is equal to e power I theta naught as z approaches e power I theta under the assumption that, so provided u is continuous at e power I theta naught. So under this assumption we prove the limit. So this completes the Schwarz theorem.